She crossed the finish line in 10.65 seconds. The world champion, the fastest woman alive. And yet, all anyone could talk about was the look on her face. It wasn't just joy. It wasn't just relief. It was years of pain, pressure, grief, and fury, all crashing through in a single breath. This wasn't a comeback. This was a reckoning. To understand how Sha'Carri Richardson got there, you've got to rewind. Not to Tokyo, not to her disqualification, but all the way back to South Dallas. Raised by her grandmother in a house full of cousins, Sha'Carri didn't grow up with luxury. She grew up with resilience. She didn't have much, but she had speed. And even more important, she had belief. In high school, she was already one of the fastest teens in the country. But it was when she hit LSU that people really started paying attention. Not just because of how fast she ran, but how she ran. In 2019, she lined up at the NCAA championships as a freshman. Gold hair, flashy nails, the kind of look that made traditionalists twitch. But then the gun fired, and Sha'Carri stopped time. 10:75 seconds, a collegiate record, at 19 years old. The track world had no choice but to take her seriously. She wasn't just fast, she was electrifying, chaotic, necessary. Because Sha'Carri didn't walk like an Olympic hopeful. She walked like she already owned it. She pointed at cameras. She talked her talk. She didn't care about norms. She was the norm now. And in the summer of 2021, she proved it. At the US Olympic trials in Eugene, she didn't just win the 100 meters, she owned the moment. After crossing in 10.86 seconds, she threw her hands up, pointed to the sky, and let the world feel her. "I'm that girl," she said. And for a brief second, America believed it. Sha'Carri was going to Tokyo. She was going to win gold. She was going to be a star. But everything changed, faster than anyone saw coming. Just a few days later, news broke. Sha'Carri Richardson had tested positive for marijuana. She was suspended, out of the Olympics. The backlash came instantly. Sponsors dropped her. The media pounced. Commentators called her irresponsible, immature, a waste of talent. What most people didn't know, she'd smoked to cope with something much heavier than nerves. Just days before her race, she'd learned her biological mother had died, and she ran through it. Then she got punished for how she grieved. Sha'Carri owned it. No excuses. "I know what I did. I'm human," she said. But the court of public opinion doesn't care about being human. It only cares about the headlines. The headlines didn't wait. They came crashing down like she'd stolen something sacred. One moment, she was America's newest star. The next, she was a cautionary tale. Suspended, disqualified, disgraced. And the world didn't ask why. It just pointed fingers. They called her reckless. They said she blew it. They asked how someone so talented could throw it all away. But none of them were there when she found out her mother had died. None of them felt what it meant to run a career-defining race while holding back grief that hadn't even begun to process. No context. No compassion. Just criticism. She lost her Olympic spot. Then her endorsements. Then her silence. 2021 should have been her breakthrough year. Instead, it broke her in ways no stopwatch could measure. And as the Tokyo Games rolled on without her, the noise only got louder. Every heat, every final, every headline, they all felt like reminders. Not that she wasn't good enough, but that she wasn't even there. Sha'Carri went quiet. No press, no interviews, no statement tour. She didn't spiral publicly. She just disappeared. And for months, track felt quieter. The charisma, the fire, the unpredictable edge, all missing. People moved on. New faces emerged. Her name stopped trending. By early 2022, most assumed the chapter was closed. Another prodigy burned out before the story got good. But Sha'Carri never said she was done. She was just figuring out how to come back on her own terms. The results didn't come fast. She returned to competition in the spring of 2022, but something was off. She got eliminated in early rounds. Her times were slower, her body looked strong, but the rhythm was gone. Every loss felt louder because of who she was, and every stumble was treated like proof she'd peaked too soon. She didn't make excuses, but she didn't explain either. What the world couldn't see was what was changing behind the curtain. She had a new coach, Dennis Mitchell, a new training environment, a new mindset, not to win the internet, to win the race. For the first time, ShaCarri was rebuilding, not from injury, but from humiliation, and she was doing it quietly. While everyone kept asking if she was finished, she was preparing an answer they wouldn't forget. The whispers never really stopped. Every time her name appeared on a start list, people asked the same thing. Is this it? Is this the one where she finally gets it right again? And for a while, it wasn't. She ran. She lost. She ran again. She barely made finals. The swagger was still there, but the wins weren't. The cameras still followed her, but not with admiration. They were waiting for a meltdown. They didn't get one. Because while the world was looking for viral moments, ShaCarri was looking for something else entirely: balance. She stayed in Florida, trained under Dennis Mitchell, worked on the basics: speed, endurance, race phases. She was building from the ground up. And in July 2023, everything clicked. At the US Championships in Eugene, Oregon, the same track where she'd once lit the world on fire and then lost it all, ShaCarri stepped back onto the starting line. Hair braided, lashes flawless, no distractions. This time, the attitude wasn't the story, the work was. The gun went off, and she exploded out of the blocks like she had something to prove, and finally, the legs to back it up. She won in 10:82 seconds. Not her fastest time ever, but the most important win of her career. Because this one wasn't about hype, it was about execution. She had just become the US 100-meter champion, again. But this time, it felt different. There was no over-the-top celebration, no viral quotes, just tears, and one quiet smile. Then came Budapest, the World Championships, the fastest field ever assembled, multiple Olympic medalists, season leaders, legends. Nobody picked her to win. She didn't care. In the final, ShaCarri stayed relaxed through the first 30 meters, surged through the middle phase, and then finished like she had never finished before. 10:65 seconds. World champion. Her scream echoed across the stadium. It wasn't just victory. It was vindication. For the grief, for the suspension, for the ridicule, for the silence, for every race she'd lost while trying to find herself again. And in the post-race interview, she didn't say, "I'm back." She said something better. "I'm not back. I'm better." Just like that, she wasn't a storyline anymore. She was the standard. The world finally saw her as a champion. But ShaCarri had always seen herself that way. Budapest wasn't a finish line, it was a restart. She walked off that track not just as the fastest woman on earth, but as a woman who had taken every punch and still had more to give. In 2024, the spotlight came back full force. The Paris Olympics, the global stage, a chance for redemption, legacy, and everything she'd been denied in Tokyo. She lined up in the 100 meters again. This time, no suspension, no controversy, just competition. And even with pressure bearing down, she ran 10.84 and secured silver. Not gold, but not failure either. Not after what she'd been through. Not when you consider where she started. And just 3 days later, in the 4x100 miller relay, she got her gold. 4 American women, 1 baton, and a victory that felt like more than just a race. It felt like restoration. But something had changed by then. ShaCarri wasn't chasing headlines anymore. She was curating her legacy. Gone were the social media outbursts. Gone were the public call-outs. She'd stepped back from the noise, not because she lost her voice, but because she'd learned how to use it. She still looked like ShaCarri, bold nails, bright hair, fierce stride. But now, there was control, focus, intention. She spoke less, but every word hit harder. In early 2025, she addressed college athletes about identity and pressure. She talked about grief, mental health, and the double standards Black women face when they dare to be confident and vulnerable. It was no longer about proving herself. It was about proving what's possible when you don't quit. And when she returned to the track this season, people didn't ask, "Is she ready?" They asked, "How fast will she go this time?" Because the doubt is gone. The apology era is over. Sha'Carri Richardson isn't here to play the part of a role model. She's here to define what one can be: flawed, fast, human, fearless. In a sport that demands perfection, she brought something far more powerful: authenticity. They tried to bury her, called her a distraction, a liability, a problem. But she wasn't any of those things. She was a seed, and now she's growing into something they were never ready for. Sha'Carri Richardson isn't racing every weekend. She doesn't need to anymore. Every race now is strategic, precise, measured. This season, she's choosing her battles because the real war is coming in Tokyo. At the 2025 World Championships, she'll defend her 100 meter crown. The pressure's higher, the spotlight's hotter. But if history's taught us anything, it's that ShaCarri doesn't just run through the fire. She is the fire. This time, she's not chasing a comeback. She's building a legacy. And the world is finally ready to watch.